All right. Good evening, Uganda, and welcome to the Friday panel of journalists edition of the Hotseat right here on 933 KFM. I'm Idris Matusagawa, sitting in for Andrew Mwenda, who is away on official business. Now, tonight, we dive into the heart of Uganda's political season as parties and candidates set the stage for the 2026 presidential race. The manifestos are out. The promises are bold, but do they match the realities of our country today? From the NRM's protecting the gains pledge to FDC's call for fixing the economy, NUP's vision of a new Uganda now, and ANT's zero-tolerance stance on corruption. We ask, are these manifestos genuine roadmaps to transformation or just another round of political rhetoric? Joining me tonight, I beg your pardon, are our panelists. Jimmy Odoki, a freelance writer. Mr. Jimmy, welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Obed Katurebe, acting executive director at the Uganda Media Center. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good evening and all the best.
All right.
Good evening.
And Isaac Kayonde, policy analyst and politician. Mr. Isaac, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Listeners.
Plus, Frank Muyimba, Mujimba, I beg your pardon. Political analyst. Mr. Mujimba, where is your beautiful name from? Who gave you this name?
I think it's a normal name. If you've not had people around with such a name, then... But it's a common name.
What does it mean?
Do you know the spokesperson?
Ministry of Education.
Ministry of Education. Dennis who? Dennis Mui.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a common name.
Does it have a meaning, a special meaning?
Yes, it's a clan name.
It's for big people,
yes.
right?
Interesting. Big people with money. Well, for you, our listeners, you can join the conversation going through our social media platforms. Use the hashtag Hotseat and tell us your thoughts about the manifestos that have been going around from different parties. And I'll go through some of those. NRM manifesto was launched this week on Monday under the theme protecting the gains as we make a qualitative leap into high middle income status. Now, since NRM is the longest running party in Uganda, gentlemen, why don't we start with discussing that manifesto? How does it resonate to you? And I'll start with the man with the money, with the special name. Mr. Mjemba, what are your thoughts about NRM's manifesto?
Thank you, Idris. First of all, I think even before I dive into the manifesto, I will start with the theme itself, and that is protecting the gains. I don't know for how long you've been around or how widely you've read, but by the time the NRM came into government in 1986, so many things were not going well. Actually, when you look across all infrastructures, be it in education, be it in terms of health, be it in terms of GDP, everything was down. Maybe by then our GDP was at about is it $3 million? But currently I think we are at about, is it 66 I think $billion. When you look at in terms of education, the NRM government has come up, has innovated along the way, and it has come up with UPE, free education. Actually, it has even gotten into secondary education, university secondary education. So in terms of education, things have improved. In terms of health, if you go back and look at how people were dying of diseases, when you look at the mortality rate, when you look at the kids that couldn't celebrate their 5th birthdays. So, in other words, when you look at the what life expectation, I think that is the term. Expectancy. Today, I think it stands at around 65 years or 60 years. So, I think a lot of things have improved. Go to roads, go to a number of things in terms of security. You remember what was happening in Uganda? Almost every corner of Uganda had insecurity, they had rebel groups, but today you can drive from one corner of the country to the other. So a lot has been arrived at. The government of Uganda has done a lot. So the theme itself is talking about protecting such gains. Now, when I get into the manifesto itself, I think it is derived from the things that have been done over time. And I just mentioned a few, and also try to criticize some that I think this government under President Museveni cannot be able to achieve. When you look at things like job creation, wealth, these are things that are achievable. The government has done something, but then it has not fully achieved. When you look at projects like PDM, it is aimed at creating wealth. It started in 2022. It is now almost about 4 years. How much we've gained from that? I think it's a good milestone. When you look at things like security has been maintained. When you look at things like job creation, yes, I understand the government of Uganda cannot be able to create as many jobs as the students that we have out of universities. The number is too high compared to the jobs that are actually being that are being created. But one of the things that I think that is so hard to achieve is what they call economic and political integration. This is something that I feel, because this is an alignment between economic policies, or even economic policies of the different countries, let's say the East Africa. So this is something that is a bit hard. Yes, you can get into these regional groups, try to reduce prices, try to remove barriers, but then when you look at political integration, it is something that I don't think they can be able to achieve, where almost every country wants to keep its sovereignty. They think that if you created something like, let's say the entire East Africa has one president, you're encroaching on people, on different countries' integrity. So I think that is something that cannot be achieved during this term.
Okay.
So for the NRM manifesto, I think
it's right on the money.
Yes, I think that is it, apart from a few things that I think cannot be achieved.
Okay, so Mr. Katurebe, as the person from government, are you agreeing with this sentiment, or are we simply hearing manifestos that are being recycled for over now? We shall be celebrating 63 years of independence as a country. Are these manifestos being recycled, or does Uganda deserve better?
Well, I don't know where you pick the idea of recycling. When you look, you can through literally all of them, each one promises to offer something good. And I think any person who's offering himself or herself to lead Uganda can only promise to improve people's lives. When you look at across, they literally speak the same. They're talking about improving people's income. Oh, I think that is President Museveni's biggest song for the last how many years. Most policies that he has put across. I think he's really passionate. When you talk about infrastructure development, when you talk about peace and security, when we talk about entrenching democratic values, my view is that they are literally all speaking one thing. But again, it's the onus is on Ugandans to look into the pack of these 8 candidates, male candidates, and then they give a critical analysis or critical thinking who can deliver these wonderful promises that are being given. Of the 8, you know, there are those, you remember when they were going to the electoral commission to pick nomination letters, I think there were those who picked were 200 something. Those that were able to galvanize the basic requirements were only 8. Then of the 8, again, Ugandans are going to have a critical look into who really can deliver on these wonderful promises that each is promising. Some have even not, they are not gathering even 10 people to talk to. They have chosen to speak to on the middle of the load. So it's about Ugandans to have a critical analysis of the very few that have stayed in the lead and say who really can keep peace of this country, who really can keep growing the size of the economy to be able to benefit the millions, who really can cause the real turnaround of the country. Because where we are now is about peace. We have, yes, we've gone to school, but now it's about who can make that paradigm shift for the country to benefit all, to offer jobs, to give a total qualitative change that we are yearning for. The rest have been fixed by the old man.
I will come to Isaac Kayonde, who has been itching to say something. And for our listeners, Isaac is donning a brilliant, bright yellow T-shirt, and he's looking fresh, he's looking healthy.
I am not my clothes.
Isaac, Obed said something about having all male candidates, and it caught my ear. What do you think about that we do not have a female presidential candidate this time around?
With all this women emancipation that President Museveni brought, it can only be a failure for the women. The men, the women were there. Nancy Kalembe, Nancy was there, I think, and a couple of other very young women who were there. I mean, at the end of the day, rules are rules. They didn't qualify, better next time. But for me, I want to focus on manifestos and their relevance. I have a problem with this country politically, that we have reached the point of two extremes, that there is nobody reading a 185-page manifesto of NRM. I mean, you go anywhere, the people of Gomba are not going to vote NRM because of what the manifesto.
Mm.
The inability for one to summarize his manifesto depending on which area that he goes. I mean, So for me, I went for the recent primaries. I was the only candidate with a manifesto. And when I was giving it, after spending a lot of money printing it, people would say, like nobody was interested in the manifesto itself.
So what are the voters interested in?
The voters are interested in what you're going to tell them in 5 minutes. They're interested in other dynamics other than, who guarantees me to stay peaceful, or who comes from my area, as in the dynamics are quite different from what we profess. But that said, it doesn't take away the importance of that manifesto. It is the promise that you hold. It is the promise that people hold, and I find it very. Sorry. Yeah. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that manifestos are very important. I have read the manifestos. I think I did 3, but of course, because of time, I've lost a few points here and there. I think the manifesto for FDC it focused mainly on the economics of things, of the economy, and the cooperatives and the things that they were going to do. But again, I didn't find anything new that hasn't been said. For the NRM, which I'm more familiar with, was more of a comparative manifesto. It didn't have, it had new promises, but the way, I think 2 or 3 things that caught my eye, which were a divergence from the other manifestos. Of course, one, the comparisons that were in the NRM manifestos, there's a lot less of where we were in 1986. It's a lot to do now with, in 2019 we were here, now we are here. I mean, for electricity, they're talking about coverage of we were, I think, 40 something, we are now 60. The promise is that in the next 5 years we'll go 100 with the last mile connection. So that is in electricity. But the one which for me I feel will be very effective, will create some level of change, was around universal healthcare. So NRM is promising universal insurance coverage, universal health coverage for everybody.
And on that point, Isaac, we are going to go for a break.
As usual, the haters usually stop me when I'm making points. I'm surprised. I thought you were a new man. You will do differently.
Listeners,
but it's okay.
Do not listen to Isaac at all. You're listening to the Friday panel on the Hot Seat right here on 933 KFM. We'll take a short break, but when we return, we dig deep into whether these manifestos can genuinely fix the economy, fight corruption, and reset Uganda's future. Don't go away.
AFM.
All right, welcome back to the Friday panel, journalists edition of the Hot Seat right here on 933 KFM. I'm Idris Matusegawa, sitting in for Andrew Mwenda. Tonight, we are diving into the heart of Uganda's political season as parties and candidates set the stage for the 2026 presidential race. The manifestos are out. We've talked about them before the break, but do they match the realities of our country? Isaac, before the break,
Yes.
you mentioned that nowadays voters are not looking to read manifestos to understand them, to understand what you are about. What do voters want?
No, like I had said earlier, the issues that surround how a person elects, how people are electing, are beyond what they are writing in the manifestos. Yeah. They are beyond what they are writing in the manifestos. And like I had said earlier, the manifestos, I mean, people, like you saw what was in 2021, where you see the umbrella is where you tick, you know, for parts of Central. It wasn't really any promise or anything. It was, so we have reached that level of apathy around issues of understanding our election things. But as I was breaking it down, really, I said there were only mainly two things that would create a fundamental difference for the NRM: the promises that they have made, 100% coverage of electricity for everyone, then the universal health care. I felt like if those two were sorted, then I think NRM is still on the right track. The other things, the roads that you've probably had. The other manifesto which caught my attention was NUP. NUP went, I think, and read the National Development Plan 4 and said, let us promise these things. Of course, they came up, they are doing the school feeding program. I think that's their main thing. And, you know, Bobby Wine saying, you know, an egg for a child and a cup of porridge or whatever it is. That's the main. I saw that if they go to power, which I highly doubt. But there's something else which caught my eye, and I think that was they have promised devolution, real devolution. They added the word real devolution, which I am thinking should be bringing back the debate of federal. And I saw that as something which needed more scrutiny in their manifesto. The issue was about regions trying to manage and devolving powers and resources back to different regions. I felt it has a semblance of what federal is, but also this government has offered that before, and it was rejected when they did the regional tier. What is interesting is that in our constitution, the regional tier still exists. The amendments were made in 2005. I don't know whether they were repealed, but it exists. And regional tier was premised around the fact that if different districts agreed together to manage their resources, then they would come. Regional tier had automatically made all districts of Buganda as a region. You know, it had some fundamentals I can't get into right now. But so they have promised this real devolution. That is NUP. So for me, I find that, look, even we saw it in 2001 when Besigye offered that he will remove graduated tax, and be sure, when the NRM took power, that was one of their first things to do, to remove. So that's the use of manifestos, to really compare and see the ideas come forth. But I can tell you, as the election is, there's nobody whose voting patterns are going to be swayed by the promises that are in manifesto.
Jimmy Odochi, freelance writer. NUP, as Isaac has mentioned, their manifesto is majorly looking at resetting, a complete reset of the nation, aiming to address decades of what it describes as dictatorship, corruption, and economic mismanagement. And they call their manifesto A New Uganda Now. Jimmy, do we need a new Uganda now?
In many aspects, yes. Like the fight against corruption, I think NRM's totally failed. Maybe NUP will offer a better alternative in fighting corruption. You know, the human rights issues, you've seen how the NUP supporters have been humiliated. So you need a new way of, guaranteeing freedoms to people. So in that aspect, I think NUP provides a better, it's not tainted. The NRM has been tainted, has been involved in these things. And in one of the highlights of the manifesto, they talk about good governance. And when you talk, in freedom, you see how the constitution has been, we really I don't know if you have a constitution. Will a transition ever take place? If the old man wants to keep contesting, I think, so there's, NUP might come with a better alternative compared to what we are saying. But at the same time, there are some gains, of course. When NRM rules for 40 years, of course, in 40 years you can't just be doing nothing. There are some achievements they've made, maybe in the aspect of security. We don't see like aggression from other countries and all that, but they are failed to do. I think NUP now looks at what the mistakes, what they are failing to do, what the ruling government is failing to do, and then they use that as their message that they come to do better. How much money do we lose in corruption? Even the IGG itself, the IGG has mentioned figures that some have disputed. The figure that Uganda, the amount of money lost through corruption. So I think it's NUP really seeing what is being done. You've seen today as they were leaving Mayuge to go to Iganga, you can see the unfairness already. When they see that you attracting huge crowds that might be embarrassing to the president, then they find ways of humiliating you, stopping you, and making life really complicated. The free and fairness that we talk about does not exist. Maybe if NUP comes, it won't be militant. It won't be a dictator as.
I want to ask you, have you seen an NRM procession? Have you seen any NRM procession?
To clarify on that one, of course, one, they weren't stopped from going to Iganga. Before these campaigns began, they were given roadmaps, and police agree with their agents. These are the routes to use to go to your venue. But because someone has failed to attract news, he has failed to be on page one, has failed to be read story in broadcast. It's not the first place.
No, are you saying
some information? Yes.
The crowd, it was. I mean, you follow
listen,
like real time.
They told him from Mayuge, they said, this is your route to your venue in Iganga. He was insisting to pass through the main town. They said, no, go to your venue. Then he chose, when the police also said, no, you're not going through a town with a possession, they drove to Jinja. In Buyende, he drives to the venue. Probably he realized the venue is not yet, he will not get the number he wants. He wants to drive through town. The police stood their ground, said, this is your route, sir. Until he obeyed, he went, addressed his lady, and left.
Jimmy, you seem like you agreeing with
probably he doesn't have information. And again, Jimmy, let me assist you. For all the 1 week now into election, what the likes of Jimmy and what expected was to see tear gas, and then now Bobi Wine is on page one and what. But the government said no. Each one will be given a time to talk to voters until cows come home. But that one has denied you page one story, and they're trying to create a story.
From Jimmy's point of view, what he said earlier was the routes were assigned,
yes,
but he felt they were unfair. Is it that what you're saying?
What do you want? Is it a route that is fair, or a route that will lead you to your venue, the gazetted venue?
No, they were just, when they saw the supporters, they thought
it's not about supporters.
It's not about the route. They are just using the route.
In Kayunga, they were saved by God's grace. They caused themselves an accident. You want to believe that one?
This is from a journalist, from a really reputable.
A screwed journalist. What to expect?
The long and ecstatic crowd snaking their way from Mayuge towards Iganga is unexplainable. There's something building up in Busoga. The long and ecstatic crowd snaking their way from Mayuge.
And so,
I mean, the support was, they were just overwhelmed. you see, when an opposition candidate gets such kind of, receive, they fear when they compare with. If I can tell you, one of the panelists who used to be here said the president was so annoyed when the newspapers were covering and showing basically the crowds. So this debate about crowds and how to frustrate, because they are always watching, how will they be watching?
Anyway, how did we generate debating crowds? I thought we were talking about manifesto. Anyway,
to come back to you, Jimmy, because this was your time, are you saying that the only selling point of NUP is that they are fresh, they haven't governed the country before, and Ugandans are expecting something new from them?
When you're ruling government like the NRM party, it's your mistakes that they can capitalize on and add some new things. Not only those, but it's easier for them to poke holes in what you've been doing in a wrong way. And there are so many. If you are to look at this NRM government, they can say, oh, we have done this, or all that. But if you begin critically analyzing the amount of money, how much is lost in, how many people are graduating from the UPE. So if you look at the health sector, they can say, oh, Mulago, this, all that, but it's in a terrible mess. Like, do you ever go to a government facility and get the kind of services you deserve? Or most people end up going in private facilities, people who have money. Really, that never used to be the case. When the ministers are always saying, oh, Aga Khan, oh, all these big people, any small thing you're flying out. So you don't even trust your health care. So you're always, in the past, Amin used to go to Mulago, Obote, all those people, all those presidents, but what do you see in this? Then Noop will always say that, this one time even the IG just said, for us, we don't care, we really go out. It is you who suffer.
Well, where do you go to seek help?
Of course.
Assistance, you are listening to the Friday panel on the hot seat. The seats are hotter. The conversation is getting heated up, but stick with us on 933 KFM. We shall take a short break, but we'll return with again, dig deeper into the manifestos. What do they mean? Is that what the voters want or not? Welcome back to the Friday Panel Journalists edition of the Hot Seat, right here on 933 KFM. I'm Idris Matusegawa, sitting in for Andrew Mwenda tonight. We are talking about the manifestos of the different political parties, and we have been discussing this issue for the last 37 minutes. Now, as we have entered our last segment, I will come to you, Frank Mujimba, the man who has the money. We have established. So, the FDC, Frank, yes. 2026-2031 manifesto runs under the theme, Fixing the Economy, Money in Our Pockets, outlining an ambitious plan to tackle Uganda's economic challenges, youth unemployment, governance deficits, and gaps in social services. The question would be, is money in your pockets or not? And also, is this a realistic manifesto? Does it even relate to Ugandans?
Thank you, Idris. First of all, let me first make a general comment about manifestos. Manifestos, these are social contracts between contestants or people who want to come into power and the people who are going to vote them into power. Honestly, I really don't think there is these manifestos, when you look at all of them, I don't think they are different in terms of ideology. They're not ideologically different. They will all talk about job creation. They will all talk about socio-economic transformation. They will all talk about putting monies in your pockets. They all talk about. So there is no fundamental difference about what each of these people is actually talking about. But also important to note, yes, manifestos. A manifesto is an important tool, but I think for a developed country, for a country whose middle income class, whose largest population, whose biggest population has actually crossed into what you would call middle income status. But as per now, I don't think there is any voter out there, especially voters in the rural areas, or even here in urban areas. Most of them are out of the middle income class, and I don't think any of them is going to sit and read the manifesto and be able to vote a leader depending on the different things these people would want to do for them. For starters, we do not have even the basics that we would want to start with. When you look at national level, look at things like roads. I don't think that every corner of this country has a tarmac road. I don't think they all have furnished hospitals with medicines. I don't think that everywhere in this country people are going children are going to school. So first of all, we have to first fix these things that affect us, regardless of wherever you come from, whether you come from northern Uganda or central Uganda, wherever. So these are things that affect us collectively. And when you look at manifestos, I don't think there is a manifesto that, because manifestos are general, you cannot have a manifesto that will solve all problems of the people in the north. They have their challenges that are actually different. When you go to the west, they also have their challenges that are also different. So first of all, what we need to do as a country is first of all to fix the things that affect us: hospitals, schools, roads. Then also ensure that like the government is putting up programs, ensure that people have incomes in their pockets, and they actually, the largest population has crossed into middle income status. Now that is when people will start focusing on manifestos. And also I think that can come post the current leader that we have, because all the people that maybe will come after that, none of them will tell you how they fought for this country, how they shed their blood for this country. So we shall be looking at these people as equals, you understand? So it depends who has a good manifesto, whose manifesto actually speaks the problems that you have. So that's when we get down, sit down and read these manifestos and see which manifesto is talking about maybe reducing taxes if I want more income into my pocket. Look at also you look at a manifesto that will solve your problems. If your challenge may be you come, let's say, from the cattle corridor, which manifesto is actually talking about solving the issues that particular area has. So I think until we fix those, then that is when we can be able to look at manifestos. But also, one thing I wanted to mention about, like you are commenting about the National Unity Platform. Like I said, there is nothing that is actually new. But also it is fine on all those points to actually add, what should I call it, something, and say enhanced, because these things are already in existence. So you can only enhance. If you talk about technology driven economy, these are things that are already happening, but you can only enhance. But also, my challenge with the NUP manifesto, it is good, it is okay, but then when you look at the team that is being collected to execute this manifesto, for me, that's where I find they are going wrong.
Interesting. And by this time, I want to bring in Isaac to the conversation. Isaac, the issue that Frank Mujimba has quite brilliantly phrased is that we are at a point where manifestos don't matter, because number one, the general population is under middle income, so their problems are not really to sit down and read. You also echoed the same issue that people do not care about manifestos.
Yeah.
But one thing that I want you to shed more light on, Frank has said, right now, for Uganda to start thinking about manifestos, it will be post-Museveni, per se. And that because we are, in a way, trapped in a situation whereby someone is telling you, I fought for this country, so you do not have to judge what I do. Then what do we judge governments on, if not manifestos?
No, I think manifestos, I need it to be very clear. Yeah. Manifestos are very important. Very, very important. Like he said, they are the social construct, they are social contract. That the people seeking office and the population have. Now, what happens usually here is that there is a post-election review of the manifesto. But because people are not voting leaders based on their manifestos, but the manifestos are important. That distinction I needed to have it very clear. For example, now, You know, when NRM promised, I think in 2016, to revive the airline, they didn't revive it until 2018, 2 years down the road. But because they knew that 2021 is coming, they needed to fulfill that. Now, for example, NRM, I know the NRM manifesto, I think, better than the others, but there's a promise for government to support individuals who have failed to find work after 2 years after university. That's a promise. That's a solid promise to tackle unemployment amongst the youth. That if you finish university and you don't find a job in the first 2 years, please come to the government and we shall support you. Now, we are going to see the most realistic, and I'm an NRM supporter, I feel like the most realistic government that will probably come will be the NRM. And we will judge them based on those things that they have promised. There are 100 now. NRM has something unique within government, is that it created a manifesto implementation team headed by our very good friend Willis Mashasha, and had given a score of the promises they made. They have achieved, I think, 83%. By all standards, I feel that's good. What I'm saying is that, yes, that's the thing that I'm saying. That, look, we need these manifestos. We need to scrutinize them such that we know if, for example, NUP, you want to give a point of information? On marking, you know, when President Museveni was being sworn in, there's 10 issues to look at in this term. If you look at them, if you're scoring, maybe it'll be like at most 3 out of 10. So these people are giving themselves 83%. Yeah, it's pretty basic. Today he was in Notalebtong. Where was the place? Where he was speaking, and then he gave an account. He said, look, there are 12... Apache. 12, everyone has mobile phones. He said, look, we promised as an NRM government that every sub-county will have a school, a secondary school. Now, when he was in Apache, he explained, he says there are 12 sub-counties in this district. We have covered 10 sub-counties. We have schools. In the next election, I mean in the next cycle after being elected, we shall complete the thing. The people of Apache will appreciate them because they know the 10 schools. And they know the promise that he talked about primary schools and said, look, there are about 68 government primary schools. We promised that they will cover everywhere. And indeed, they have covered everywhere. Health centers, he talked about, they have covered 10 sub-counties. There's a healthcare. We don't have 12. We don't have the other 2. But we are going to do them, and then we are going to upgrade. That's the accountability I'm talking about. NUP will as well go to Parliament and criticize them. If he has lied, for sure there's evidence on the ground. There'll be evidence. So for me, what I'm trying to emphasize here is that these manifestos are very important. Unfortunately, that people are not voting based on those manifestos. The highlights of those manifestos are however, very important. You have Munyagwa who comes and says, no, we shall replace Swahili with French. That is a promise that he has given. Whether it is a good thing or not, it is best. It is left to the voters to decide.
Well, whether it's good, go to our social media platforms and have your say about the manifestos, the promises made, the promises broken. Use the hashtag Hotseat. Don't go away. We shall be right back. Right, welcome back to Friday Panel, journalists edition of the Hotseat right here on 933 KFM. We are in our last minute or so to talk about the manifestos of the different parties. And gentlemen, I think let's give our last remarks on this issue as we say good night to our listeners. And I'm coming to you, Mr. Ben Katurebe. So, conclusive remarks in a few minutes.
In a few minutes, talking about manifestos, there are only 2 candidates who are talking into their manifestos. It's President Museveni and to some extent Nanda Ramafabi of FDC.
Where are you living, Bobby Wine?
Bobby Wine is only ranting about the person of President Museveni.
Yeah.
It's about he has arrested so and so. He must be removed. He's the problem. I mean, talking about the person President Museveni and how everything must be done to move President Museveni. By the way, for information, when he was in his wrong winding speech in Bwebaja, Rweza on nomination, he did not even ask Ugandans to vote him. He was just there talking about President Museveni, how bad, how what, evil, and that's how he ends his what. Bujamundu, similar situation. It's about Museveni, the person. I don't know if you have followed Bujamundu. The whole thing is about removing President Museveni. For what reasons? No, I don't understand. But when you listen to President Museveni, you talk passionate about financial inclusion, raising the size of the economy. You talk about science and innovation, creating jobs, completing the oil story. Probably, or you don't want to know that, probably now you have months to have.
When the president is campaigning, he still remains the president, so he's the one who can talk about those things. It makes sense. They don't divide us.
No, even if you are Mugisha Muntu and you seek to become president, you cannot be your topic be your opponent and how you must remove the opponent. Yeah. And it's not about removing the opponent, because you cannot remove him. You must convince your voters that he must be removed because of 1, 2, 3 things. Even on the issue of corruption, the president is so strong about it. One, to admit that there must be something very, very, very they must be deliberate to stamp out corruption. But
it's failed.
I mean, we need to.
The level of corruption keeps just going up.
No, incidentally, we know we have become a society of sensationalization, including the IGG herself. And I'm saying this one, when he said 10 trillion gets lost every financial year, and people had to question, what exactly, tell us how we will lose. It ended up that they even calculated the time of hours a public official spends in an office, or the absenteeism, they quantified all that to be.
Minister Katurebe, you have 30 seconds.
Now,
when you get points, that's what we have the money.
Over and above.
Yes.
A little bit from the manifesto, I'm impressed that people are campaigning. Everything is peaceful. What the donkeys prayed for and are still praying for is not happening. Your new kid, Bobi Wine, is everywhere looking for votes. And let's just fast forward, roll into January, and then see what happens.
Jimmy, your last remarks, sir?
Manifestos are good, but it's the implementation. They can promise all these good things, and then when it comes to implementing, they are not doing anything. So the NRM, if they assessed from the last promises they made, what would you, if someone now, but ideally, most of us vote, or not really how we read into detail, but what we see, if you see people are being arrested, activists, it's just, I don't know.
To have peace you enjoy, criminals must be arrested.
Activists are not criminals.
No,
activists
they
are not criminals. No.
They hide under.
Supporters are not criminals. No, they're not. They're not. So if you keep people come here from to give support to Bobi Wine, and then somehow they're abducted. They're not even arrested. They're abducted. That shows how scared the ruling party is, because when you look at the kind of support, if it was really free and fair election, I'm not sure if it's not really if it was free and fair without interruption by all this, but where the president goes, everything stops. Is given full attention, but when like Bobi Wine goes, there's a lot of interferences, because when they look at these crowds, they get worried that what this young man can do will embarrass the old man with the heart. So let's make his life difficult. But if it was free and fair, I'm not sure, maybe they'll go to the next round.
Jimmy, before I move on to Isaac for his last remark, Jimmy, if you were a president tomorrow, would you protect your interests?
The interests of the country first.
Would you protect your interests?
Not the interest. You protect the interests of the country.
Okay. Isaac, your last remarks.
My last remarks are really a thing that as a nation, really, we need to go back to the basics. You know, we've had a discussion right now about the NUP selection process, and we are saying, look, we have a special admiration for countries which present their best in their politics, you know,
And
meritocracy, right?
That was in part because of the ruling government that was
yes,
interfering with everything. So they decided an easier way.
As I was concluding, as in we need to go back to a merit-based system where people can make informed decisions based on either promises, experience, and things like that.
Well, that's retired Major General Mugisha Moto's manifesto is all about.
Not to sound condescending, really, and consistency with what he has been bringing, saying is that, you know, and I've said it here before, Mugisha Muntu is a cat in a dog fight. Okay. No, it's that's how I can put it. But
you had it here first.
He's moving. He's moving with his ideals, and the ideals are quite divergent from the reality.
All right, we are running out of time. So yeah. Frank, please, in 30 seconds.
Okay, I just make it brief. For me, two things that are actually interconnected. One is the resources that you actually put together to execute the manifesto, but also in terms of funding, where are you going to get the resources, the money to be able to be able to support this manifesto that you're talking about. For example, you know, Parliament is we all agree that embezzlement, corruption are at the heart of this country, and this is something that we need to fight. So if you're saying you are NUP and you are pulling out credible people, or for example this man who has been seated at the head of the park committee, and then you're putting someone who might not be able to fight corruption in parliament, the kind of team that you're going to take to execute this, but also the resource envelope, where are we going to get the money as a country to be able to fund this budget?
All right, and that's it for tonight's edition of the Friday Panel Journalists edition of the Hot Seat on 933 KFM. Big thanks to my guests, Jimmy Odochi, Obed Katurebe, Frank Mujimba, and Isaac Kayonde for sharing their insights. The manifestos are on the table, but the real question remains: will they transform Uganda, or are they just political slogans? As always, the final judgment lies with you, the people. I'm Idris Matusegawa, sitting in for Andrew Mwenda. Thank you for listening and have a great evening.